Hello, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, where we're following our fictional Elvis fan, Joyce, who's in Memphis on August 16th, 1977. This is actually the next day, August 17th, 1977. The day before, Joyce listened to the radio broadcast. She watched the television news. She couldn't believe what she was hearing or seeing. She was trying to sort fact from fiction. The next day, she went to her local news agent and said, "I want to see everything about Elvis Presley." He gave her a big stack of newspapers. That's what we've been going through during the last several episodes. In the last episode, we saw Dr. Nick's blue dome light, like a Starsky and Hutch police light that he used and had flashing when he came to try to save Elvis on August 16th, 1977. We also saw his car, the very car he probably used that on. We can't be absolutely positive, but I believe that was the car he was driving with the blue dome light when he came to try to save his friend. Hi, Terry. Thank you for coming. Hi, Carolyn. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys supporting me and coming to these lives while they're broadcasting. It really helps me out. So if you guys missed any of that stuff from the previous episode, definitely head back, listen to that episode. But today we're going to move forward. Got a lot of stuff to cover. Hello, Regina. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate having you here. And we're going to get started on all the new stuff because there's still so much to cover. Now, this very first thing that we're going to look at is the picture that you see on your screen. This is a lady. Her name was Arlene Miller. She was a fan of Elvis Presley. The little girl is her daughter, Carmen, and they came from Nebraska to Graceland to try to see Elvis Presley. And this is not August 17th. This is actually the next day, August 18th. So we're seeing a little bit of a preview of the next day. And they are waiting at Graceland's gate to see the hearse pull out as it heads for the gravesite. So they've come from Nebraska to witness that event, and they're standing there waiting for it. Well, hey, Joe, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you coming and for the comment. Keep doing a great job. Really appreciate that. And Carolyn, thank you so much for saying that, for thanking me for doing this. I've got all this knowledge. I'm wanting to share it with the Elvis community. It's all freely available to everybody because all of it's out there on the internet. You know, the stuff that we see in the books, that's from a very specific perspective. All of the books, whether they're written by somebody that knew Elvis or they're written by somebody else. And you've only got to read Elvis by Albert Goldman to understand exactly what I'm talking about. But everybody has a perspective like that. And what I'm trying to do is peel that back so we can get to things like source documents. And in this series, we're following the actual news broadcast, we're following the newspapers, we're following the radio, we're seeing what the public would have seen, and we're sprinkling in some things that the Elvis fans are finding that really didn't come out till much later. But in our scenario, we can't let those things wait to come out forever because we already know about them. And so part of this is trying to discuss that and fit these in. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. To get back to the show, we got Arlene here and her daughter, Carmen, and you can see the grief in Arlene's face. And so the thing that we're going to do first today is we're going to watch another television broadcast, and this one has a very special friend of Elvis Presley in it. So let's take a look and see if I can make this magic happen.
We're back live in front of the Graceland Mansion here, the home of Elvis Presley, as the vigil continues. And with me, if you haven't recognized him already, is one of Elvis Presley's favorites, JD Sumner of the Stampner Quartet.
So this is JD Sumner. They're live in front of the Graceland Mansion. If anybody could just comment that you can hear the audio on the video. I'm not always sure I've got these settings right. Still learning how to do everything. So I want to make sure that you guys are able to hear this. But this is JD Sumner. And the way he looks right now is the way he would have looked on stage if Elvis had not passed away and they had made it to the concert that night, or even on this night, which was the following night, because they would have had another concert this night. And that's what he looked like when he performed. And his Stamps Quartet actually opened the show. You know, there were multiple acts that came out before Elvis did, and JD was one of them. And he understood that it was Elvis's way of getting gospel out to the fans so that he could spread the word through his rock and roll concerts. Now, Elvis also sang gospel, and JD was on stage with him with the Stamps Quartet while they were singing those gospel songs. But every show, JD, the later ones, JD and his Stamps Quartet opened as part of the opening acts and sang gospel to the crowd. And I believe Elvis is the only rock and roll entertainer that ever did it then or since. I'm pretty sure. If anybody else knows different, let me know. I know there are some Christian rock artists and some who switched over a little bit, but I don't know of anybody anywhere approaching Elvis' stature that did that. And Terry saying that, yes, he can't hear. Thank you so much, Terry and Carolyn. Thank you guys for responding. And Carolyn saying that she loved JD Sumner, that he was a true friend to Elvis. Yeah, I definitely believe so. When Elvis was a young man, he was poor. He could not afford to get into the gospel concerts that he could not always afford to get into the gospel concerts that he wanted to. Sometimes he's a little short on pocket change, and he would hang out at the stage doors. And JD saw him there one time and asked him what he was doing. And when he learned that he didn't have the money, he invited him in and said, anytime that you don't have it, just come onto the back door. I'll let you in. And Elvis never forgot that kindness. And that's why he wanted JD on stage with him. He was doing his big shows in the 1970s. Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you being here. And to get back to this, let's see what JD has to say.
JD, we at Channel 5 know how close you and Elvis were, and we all extend our condolences. When was the last time you saw Elvis, JD?
Well, in the last week. These are just things that we don't understand. I can't believe it. I've seen him 3 times, and I can't believe it. It's just one of those things that you and I could be dead in the next 5 minutes. Called, and we're supposed to be in Portland, Maine tonight. He had a bigger appearance tonight.
How long have you been with Elvis?
So we hear there where JD says he can't really believe this has happened and that he's seen him 3 times. Marion, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you being here. Hi, Angie. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you being here too. But JD just said that he's been to see him 3 times. Now, what does he mean? He means he's gone up to the body 3 times and looked at it in the coffin and stood there wondering what's happened. How did we get here? And he can't believe that it's Elvis in the coffin. And I'm sure he's having flashbacks to when Elvis's mother passed away, because it would have been a very similar scenario. So let's see what else that JD, he's about to tell us how long he's been with Elvis.
Since 1972. Of course, I've been knowing Elvis since he was 14 years old. I used to let him in the back door of gospel singing when I was with the Blackwood Brothers here in Memphis. And we've just been close friends since then. I sang at his mother's funeral, and it's Saturday it's going to be. I got to sing it here.
I was going to say, we understand that you will sing at the funeral tomorrow. What kind of songs will you sing, JD?
Well, the songs that he loved to hear. We've sung for him many times, and we'll sing the songs, the gospel songs that he loved to hear, his favorites.
They said, so JD said he's going to sing Elvis's favorites the next day at the funeral. So I find it surprising that JD could even make it out there to do that interview, but I think he thought it was important to get words out there that were on the airwaves that weren't the words of some other people that we're going to look at today. So let's move forward, and we're going to see another clip. And this is actually a small series of clips that form one story.
Here's Action News 5, live from the Mid-South's leading news station.
Good evening. I'm Dick Hawley.
I'm Roger Cooper, and this is Action News 5.
They're coming from all over the world to pay their last respects to Elvis. Friends, fans, and fellow entertainers are all gathering at the Graceland mansion today and tonight. Our live action cam has been there all day, and reporter Mason Granger has the latest details.
Dick, it is now raining water and raining confusion out here. It's been raining, confusion has reigned here all afternoon ever since the public was allowed inside Graceland to see Elvis's body. Now, as you can see, the line stretches all the way down Elvis Presley Boulevard. There are thousands of people out here, and ever since they got here, it has been a mob scene. People have been crowded in front of the gates of...
So that ambulance that just pulled out, I don't know if that's the same ambulance that took Elvis. The one that the spa guy has in his museum, the Tiger Man Dojo, just down the street from Graceland now. But it might be, because it looks a whole lot like that ambulance. You know, it was a certain style, and it would have been, you know, one of the ones reporting to the scene, just like they came here to get Elvis. So you've got to wonder if I'm sure that ambulance was picking up people here at Graceland because they were passing out. The cops were calling to get people taken to the hospital. And that sure looked like that exact same ambulance. Now, of course, they probably had several within the fleet that looked like that. But then again, they could have been bought at different times, and some would have been slightly different models. That one looked a lot like it. Just some speculation. Good time to give my disclaimer. I don't actually know anything I'm talking about. I'm here for entertainment only. We're all here for entertainment and to look at this source material and come to a decision for ourselves what we think it means. Hi, Martha. Thank you so much for coming. And you're right. It's hard to believe that it'll be 48 years tomorrow. And the things that we're looking at today are one day past that. So 48 years plus a day for what we're looking at right now.
Graceland trying to get in. Ambulances have been trying to get through the crowd to help sick people. Probably at least 100 people have fainted here. Were passed out this afternoon due to the heat, due to exhaustion. Ambulances have been unable to get through the main gate to help those people. People have been pushing and shoving, creating a scene of complete chaos out here. Police officials...
Now, take a good close look at this scene of complete chaos. Now, what I see is a lot of people that are crammed together, not exactly happy about it, probably got a little jostling going on. Yeah, apparently they're too crammed together to let anybody through the gates, but it feels like they might be amenable to moving if the police were to, actually enforce them being away from the gates. Compared to the crowds that we've seen recently in the news over the past 5 to, say, 7 years, this is a very, very peaceful crowd. I don't see any chaos here as compared to what we would say is chaos today. So this just shows you how much the standards have changed between today and yesterday.
That I've talked to have said that they have seen nothing like this in Memphis. Police Director Buddy Chapman said he's certainly seen nothing like it since he's been involved in city government. There are about 80 policemen out here trying to control the situation, 40 sheriff's deputies, and about an hour ago, 40 National Guardsmen from the Memphis Air National Guard unit were called out also to try to contain the crowd. But so far, nothing seems to have worked. It is still a complete state of confusion out here. The police are trying their level best to get this under control, but it seems to be just a very, very difficult job for them. Now, the body of Elvis Presley went on view this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and the house was scheduled to be closed at 5 o'clock to the public. However, it is going to be open to the public until 5:45. According to Police Director Buddy Chapman, an aide to Presley told Chapman that the gates to Graceland will be closed this afternoon at 5:45, which means there are going to be an awful lot of unhappy people out here this afternoon who are not going to be able to get in to see Elvis. And Police Director Chapman says that probably means the worst is yet to come, because when those people hear that they're not going to get in, there's going to be some trouble. Now, all of this is the culmination of 24 hours of activities that have started occurring right after Elvis's death, and we have a tape report on what's happened up till now.
So there we can see what's going on right now at Graceland within our timeline. So our fictional fan Joyce, she could be right here in this crowd, waiting her turn to maybe get up there and see Elvis. She's not going to make it. A lot of these people aren't going to make it. Even though they're leaving it open later, they're not going to be able to move this many people in. There's just too many people here. So those of you who have been following, you know that in the early reports, we heard that 75 people spent the night overnight at Graceland. And so this is somewhere within 15, 16 hours from then, and there are maybe tens of thousands here. Like, they don't even have any idea how many are here. They do have about, according to what they were saying there, about 80, maybe 100 people that are trying to keep control. So that would indicate numbers closer to maybe 1,000 or a few thousand, but who knows? A lot of people, way beyond 75 or 100, as we saw quoted earlier. So did they all just get there today, or have they been there since overnight? According to the newspapers, only 75 are there, so they've all gotten there in the last few hours. Hi, Honolulu Elvis fan. Thank you so much for coming. I believe you're new here. I don't think I've seen your name here before, so welcome, and definitely appreciate having you here. Let's see what else they have to say about what happened, I'm guessing, yesterday.
Priscilla Presley, Elvis's former wife, slipped quietly into Memphis last night. Other relatives and friends flew in too. Early this morning, they gathered inside the quiet walls of Graceland, while a crowd started forming outside the gates.
So here they're indicating the crowd started forming early this morning, and that Priscilla got there about 3 a.m., something like that, which pretty much jives with what we heard from Vester in a previous episode. So we knew that Priscilla was there, but if you hadn't happened to see that particular news item from Vester, then, you know, and if you weren't reading the papers, then this is where you heard it, here on this ABC broadcast probably, that Priscilla was indeed now in Graceland. She's really there to get Lisa, and of course I'm sure that she's devastated by the fact that Elvis is gone, and it's got to be terribly emotional for her to deal with, no matter what you think about Priscilla as a person or what she was actually doing right then. And she did have some, what I would think of as inconsiderate or rude behavior at this moment. And we're not going to go over it in this episode, but it will eventually come up. And it has to do with the way that she treated other females within Elvis's life. So that will eventually come out in another episode. And Honolulu is saying that they got there at midnight and there was already close to 10,000 people. So that sounds like there was more than 75 that spent the night outside of Graceland. So you got to wonder how many were outside the Memphis funeral home when they reported there were 50. So that was probably hundreds as well. But that's really interesting, Honolulu. The fact that you were there and that you've come to watch the show here, that's great. I really appreciate that, and you dropping that knowledge for us. Because that's what we're looking for, that firsthand, not out of the newspaper kind of knowledge. And now you've documented it right here within the broadcast. So thank you so much. And Honolulu saying there were 27. Wow. And did you just happen to be in Memphis? Or did you live there by chance? Or because with the name Honolulu, I would have assumed you were in Hawaii. And don't have to answer anything. I don't want to get too personal with you or anything that you don't want to share, but very interesting story. I'm sure we'd all love to hear more about it. So feel free to share if you like. And then Carolyn saying that she was 3 years old and doesn't remember, and Debbie was saying she was 15. Yeah, and we're coming up on that day in 2 days, and so this is a really timely series, I think, for a lot of people right now, because their memories are right there back in that moment. And Debbie saying that she can remember it like it was yesterday, and also her brother's birthday. And Honolulu saying she was in Atlanta visiting family, so you heard that Elvis passed away, and you were one of the ones that had to make the trip. That's even more amazing. You're just like this lady from Nebraska that we were looking at earlier in the picture, and her daughter. Rode your Harley to Tennessee through Alabama. That's awesome, too. That's something Elvis would have loved, and that he would have done himself. Okay, let's go back and see what else they have to say.
The people came from California and Oklahoma, Georgia, and New York. Some had camped out all night. How long have you been an Elvis fan?
It's a long time, 20 years. So at least 20 years.
What was your reaction when you heard about it?
It's kind of an empty feeling. It's hard to put in words, just real empty inside. It's kind of hard to say. It's kind of lost for words, really.
I like what that guy had to say and the way that he said it.
These are the faces of Elvis fans, devoted fans, sad fans, people who wore black, people who brought wreaths and flowers for the Graceland gate in memory of Elvis.
He's fantastic. He's the king. What more can you say? He's just the greatest, I think.
The fans, numbering in the thousands, waited to pay their last respects to Elvis. At 11:30 this morning, a hearse carrying the singer's body left the Memphis funeral home, winding its way down Elvis Presley Boulevard to Graceland. The hearse quickly turned down a side street and pulled into Graceland by the back entrance. Elvis's coffin was taken from the hearse and placed in the mansion's music room. At 3 o'clock, the fans started filing in for their last view of Elvis. The coffin was open. Elvis was dressed in a white suit, blue shirt, and blue tie.
The situation now is that the gates will be closed to all mourners at 5:45 this afternoon, about 45 minutes from now. And at that time, there will definitely be thousands of people who have waited out here who will not get in to pay their last respects to the King of Rock and Roll. We will keep you up to date on whatever happens here at Graceland throughout Action News 5. Live at Graceland, this is Mason Granger, Action News 5.
This day of mourning extends well beyond the city limits of Memphis. President Carter eulogized Elvis as unique and irreplaceable. Carter said Elvis permanently changed the face of American popular culture, became a symbol of the country's vitality, rebelliousness, and good humor. Alabama Governor George Wallace said he had met Elvis several times, considered him a friend, and was shocked by his passing. Throughout the city, flags are flying at half-staff today, the traditional symbol of public mourning for a prominent person. Public buildings were the first to lower their flags. They will fly at half-staff until the burial tomorrow afternoon. Private citizens showed their respect by driving with their lights on today. With a cloudy morning, you may not have thought it unusual that all the lights were on, but as the day progressed and the lights stayed on, it became obvious what it meant.
They all drove with their lights on, and they lowered the flags to half-mast. I don't know how many people knew that had happened. Especially those of us that were younger and, can't remember that period or weren't even born yet, weren't there.
Dick? Thank you, Roger. Private citizens showed their respects by driving with their lights on today. But the cloudy morning, as you say, was rather difficult for folks to recognize the difference of any other morning. Presley friends and family were very protective of Elvis, of course, while he was alive. And even in death, the ring of security is still tight. Here's Eileen Jones with the report.
Jump ahead here.
10:30 p.m., a time when he thought few, if any, would recognize him. And today, like in the past, thousands of fans went in search for Elvis.
Jump back a little bit. I think we missed a little bit there.
Just last week that Elvis Presley and some of his friends came here to Liberty Land and rented it for the night. Why? Well, just imagine the commotion that might have started if Presley had been seen mingling with regular folks trying to have a good time.
So right here on the news, they're stating that Elvis rented Liberty Land just a few days ago, just a little bit ago. And yet we're seeing those news reports. He's been a recluse for the last 20 years, barely ever leaves Graceland, never leaves the grounds, trapped there. He's imprisoned by his own fame and wealth. But here he is. He did have to rent the whole place, but he was there with his friends. They were at Liberty Land. They had fun. He wasn't a recluse. He wasn't there by himself. He didn't have fun by himself. He liked to have his friends and people around him. And when he went to a place like Liberty Land, that included people he may have never met before. Fans that had been at the gate and got lucky enough to get invited. Fans who had followed him to Liberty Land and got lucky enough to get invited in. Friends of people who were coming, who were lucky enough to get invited to come, and Elvis was generous enough to allow people to bring their friends in a lot of cases. So just a few days, not very long before he passed away, the people in Memphis knew that he was not a recluse, yet that was still out there in the press. So we see that the media, they don't even listen to themselves a lot of times.
Elvis even had to make dentist appointments in the middle of the night. Often he came here to his dentist's office at 10:30 p.m., a time when he thought few, if any, would recognize him. And today, like in the past, thousands of fans went in search for Elvis. Although they were allowed to pay their last respects, friends and relatives continued to shield and protect the life of the man. Two of them, though, said they wanted to do whatever they could to pay tribute to the man they loved. They are members of the Stamp Quartet, a gospel singing group that performed with Elvis at every concert for the past 5 years.
The only thing I could say, besides Jesus Christ, there's no greater man that ever lived in any respect, in loving his friends, and loving the world, and giving to the world. There's no way to express it. Besides Jesus Christ, he's the greatest man I ever knew.
Was Elvis an unhappy man?
So there we see JD Sumner's out there. And he's doing exactly what I was saying earlier. He's combating the narratives that are already starting. These other people who were not with Elvis at the end, who are saying that he died of a drug overdose, that he was living this life of sin and evil. And JD is saying that that's not what I saw. That's not the life that I participated in with Elvis. And that, here is what I saw and what he believed in and what he would want you to know about himself, which is vastly different from what we're seeing come out of other people. And JD has no dog, no pony in this race, right? No dog in the race, because his paycheck has ended. Whatever he was going to get from Elvis, it's all over. He's not going to get another dime from Elvis. He'll get whatever he's contractually obligated to. The Colonel and Vernon will see to that. But he's, you know, as far as moving forward with Elvis, that's all over. And JD's not going to suffer from it because the Stamps Quartet is extremely successful. So he is going to be able to parlay this into future work, and he already could even without Elvis. That's how good JD and the Stamps were. They didn't need Elvis. They enhanced Elvis. Elvis enhanced them. They were a wonderful professional partnership. So JD doesn't have anything to really gain here by coming out and combating these narratives, but he feels it's important. That's what he does. Let's go into the comments for a second. And there's a lot of talk about how people felt when Elvis passed away and what it was like to be a fan back then. And that's, of course, very important. It really rocked people's worlds. Like JD saying he couldn't believe it. As we've seen in previous episodes, middle-aged women mostly were going to the record stores and buying up all the Elvis records to try to get their piece of Elvis, their memory of him, that moment when they first saw him and met him, and he became part of their lives. And Carolyn saying that we didn't know the person or the soul. And that's what I'm hoping to bring out within the series that I'm doing and the videos that I put out and the shorts that I make, to strip away everything that's ever been said about him and get down to what he actually did and what we can see was his true heart through his own actions. Not just the words that he may have said to somebody, those are important, but the words that he wrote himself, the words that he reflected on, the words that he repeated to others publicly. His public statements were very, very important because he thought about them. And how people around him reacted to him and how he affected their lives. I mean, that's really the truth behind Elvis Presley. It's not the stories that are out there or the sensationalistic bits. It's how he affected each person that now has their own Elvis journey, which included his friends in the inner circle and people like this guy who's about to talk, who I believe is Ed Enoch, who's also in the Stamps Quartet.
Nah, I don't know about that. Seem happy to me. It's a deep man. Fun now. A lot of stuff's a bunch of bunk, so I don't want to get into that at all, because I'd get upset that he gave.
And he says right there, the stuff that you hear and that you read, it's bunk. There's not really truth to it, that the man was very deep, and that he didn't see any indication that Elvis would have done any kind of self-harm, or he's already addressing a theory that hasn't even come out yet that Elvis disappeared himself. Nobody said that yet. Nobody's come out with that. But what Ed's saying right here, well, it combats that already, that Elvis was happy as Elvis, and he had no reason to stop being Elvis in any manner. Let's hear what else he has to say.
So much. And we gave so little really back to him. Just the people, average people, you and myself. But he gave it all to us. He gave everything he had, his life, his energy. So I guess that God needed him just a little bit worse than we did.
They both wore necklaces Elvis gave.
So he is seeking his comfort in religion. It appears that JD's doing the same thing, and they're both stating that that was also Elvis's religion, and if it had been one of them, that's what Elvis would be doing. So I think that these were two really important statements from people who were friends of Elvis, and they knew him specifically through a religious lens. People talk about how Elvis didn't go to church anymore and how he had strayed away from the Bible, perhaps, but these gentlemen are telling us that that's probably not true, because they were hanging out with him, singing these gospel songs, listening to his spiritual thoughts, and sharing their own with him. And Terry's saying that JD looked so sad that day. He sure did. And Marion saying JD really loved Elvis. He made beautiful tributes. He did. And he did write a wonderful book. And we'll eventually get there and see what he has to say in the book. And Carolyn saying that Elvis worked himself to death for the love of his fans and his loved ones. He did definitely work right up until his dying day. And I don't think his lifestyle, from what we've seen already, from the prescriptions that have come to Joyce's attention, we know that he was in a lot of pain. My belief is he was in this pain since he was age 30, that the megacolon began to develop at that time. It takes years and years for this to develop, but there is pain associated with it all the way, and that pain begins gradual at a lower level. And so it's kind of like when you watch a person age in front of you, and like what people said that were near Elvis, that they didn't see him as sick, that he didn't appear sick to them. And when we look at some footage of him, we think, oh, he looks completely terrible. Like, it's easy to see that he was sick. But I think that's true of anybody or yourself. As you watch yourself age in a mirror, you don't always catch all these things that happen so slow and gradual. And so I think he gradually worked his way up in the pain, and then he was taking more and more of the medication to try to combat the pain. Plus, he had the sleep issues, which he was also taking the medication for, and he was using what he believed were miracle cures for other items. And he did that with the belief these would work, because that's what all of society believed. It wasn't like just Elvis had this crazy thought about what these pills could do for you. Everybody believed it. And you go back and watch any television commercials from the time, you will see it, that they are advertising all kinds of stuff to you that comes in pill form. And they did for 30 or 40 years after that. I mean, I remember in the 80s and 90s, there were lots and lots of pill commercials. So this was a terrible cycle that he got into. So let's listen to what else is in this broadcast.
Gave them, and rings costing some $40,000. Elvis also gave them. And they said when they heard the news, they rushed here.
So they're saying that these two are wearing Elvis TCBs and rings worth $40,000. Now, I don't know how they evaluated that, and I don't know if they mean $40,000 per person or $40,000 altogether, so they're each wearing $20,000, but or if they've inflated the numbers because Elvis is attached to the items. These necklaces themselves, the TCB designs, the pendants, most of the rings, they were a few $1,000s, which was incredibly expensive. It was roughly like an 8-to-1 ratio to the dollar from back then. So it's roughly 8 times as expensive today, which would make something that was $1,000 at least $8,000 and possibly closer to 10, depending on exactly what it is and how you do the math. And gold itself is a different evaluation because it's gone up so much in price. But I don't think that either one of them's wearing $20,000 worth of jewelry. I think that over time, Elvis did give JD specifically a lot, and it may have all totaled up to $20,000 that Elvis spent for it. Now, once you add Elvis's name and you sell it off to a collector or something, maybe it's worth more, but in these first few years, that wasn't really true. These guys sold a lot of stuff, and they did not get very much money from it. And almost all of the documentation that you see attached from them saying, this is a real piece, this was from me, that's almost all from like 10 or 15 years later, when the original collectors sell off their collections, they reconnect with these people who sold them the items, and they get them to write documentation at that time, probably paying them something else to do it. But the total that the people got for these items, it wasn't much, and we'll go through some of that as time goes on. And Regina's saying that you can't even compare today's stars with Elvis's performance. If I would have wanted to see someone perform live, it's Elvis. Yes, I definitely agree with that. Greatest performance I've ever seen is Alice Cooper. I gotta admit, I saw him about less than 10 years ago, and he was in his 70s, and man, I never saw such a great performance of anybody on stage. Alice once met Elvis, and one of these days I'll tell you that story. But let's go back to see what else JD has to say.
From Nashville last night in a limo that Elvis gave them, but they say these gifts are nothing. It was the man who was beautiful. Eileen Jones.
So you got to see that limo that Elvis gave to JD, and it was a big limo. I mean, that was a very nice car.
Action News 5.
The outpouring of grief is causing a big problem at the Graceland mansion. Flowers are arriving by the truckload. Too many flowers, in fact. Shortly after 3 this afternoon, they ran out of room at Graceland. Police were instructed at that time to just turn the flower tucks around, tell them to wait for further instructions.
There's been so many flowers, they cannot accept them at Graceland anymore. They don't know what to do with them. People just keep sending them. And in fact, the flower industry is going to run out of flowers at some point. And they're not going to be able to get any more shipped into Memphis. That's how many are coming. And I actually have a little picture that goes along with that. Let's take a look. So I have this picture here. And this is the next day, the 18th, August 18th, 1977. Elvis has been interred in the mausoleum, and this is at that graveyard. They have brought in truckloads of these flowers to the cemetery, and they've put them everywhere. And the fans have been instructed that they may take some with them, because nobody wants all these flowers left. Nobody knows what to do with them. So Vernon's put out the word that everybody can take what they want to remember Elvis. And this lady here, she's digging through those flowers. She's getting herself an arrangement. She's going to take home a memory of Elvis from right here in the cemetery, from the love of others that has poured into Memphis from all over the world. These flowers could have been bought and sent by somebody all the way across the globe. Who knows? Maybe somebody in Japan, maybe somebody in Germany, or maybe somebody right next door. There's no way to know, but they handed these flowers out and said, please take them. Please take all you can. That the cemetery itself cannot handle this amount of flowers. And Carolyn's asking, has this ever happened before or since? And I'm not aware that it has. I mean, I know that the deaths of Michael Jackson and perhaps Prince, I'm trying to think of another one that was as big as that. And I'm not thinking of it right off the top of my head. I mean, JFK was before, but I don't think even he received an outpouring of like flowers and gifts like this, or that people in these numbers flocked to any one place to see him. But he was different, right? He was a politician and the president, so I don't think so. If anybody wants to throw into the chat that they think there was and who that was, definitely discuss that. And Honolulu is saying that the most flowers sold in one day ever still stands today. Yeah, that's my belief. Yes. And Rudolph Valentino was similar. Hey, you know, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I don't know if he had the numbers that Elvis did, but very similar. And he's a guy that Elvis really admired, and he was kind of an idol of Elvis. So that's a really good point. And Terry's saying that every flower shop in Memphis sold out in one day in August. That's right. And they were shipping those flowers in from everywhere. It was a huge boon to the flower industry, but no one could have expected that kind of demand. Just like with the records, just couldn't keep up with it. Okay, let's move on to another clip that I have.
Today, the Presley family opened the gates of Graceland Mansion for the general public to view the body of Elvis. 5 p.m., the crowd numbered more than 70,000. Traffic was brought to a halt.
So now we've got a number, more than 70,000. Angie's saying, what about Princess Diana? Oh, that's a great one. But that would have been in England, right? So I don't really know. I've got no idea, but maybe that's a good thought. Yeah, I know it was worldwide. I remember it hitting every newspaper. So I think the impact of Princess Diana's death is very, very similar to Elvis's, now that you mentioned that. The only other one I could think of is maybe the Challenger disaster, but that was a group of people and not a single individual. But I think that affected at least America and maybe the world in the same way, but not for a specific person. So I don't know that they outpoured any flowers or anything like that to anybody. Let's watch the rest of this.
Temperatures reached 87 degrees. Those who had stood in line for as long as 6 hours began to pass out from exhaustion, as many as 100 of them. News teams from around the world were represented. More than 24 hours, Mason Granger of our staff filed the only live Memphis television reports from the mansion. 6:30, the gates were closed. Only a third of the crowd had actually been admitted to see Elvis. The rest were dispersed. Some had been physically removed. All were disappointed.
I'm angry because that I didn't get to see Elvis for the last time, which I hope is not the last time. I hope I'm not turned away from the pearly gates like I was turned away from his gate.
Several persons were arrested for disorderly conduct, but for
She hopes she's not turned away from the pearly gates like she was from these gates. That's really a strong statement. Now, they said that a third of the people got through. That's more than 20,000 people. If the 70,000 number is correct, because a third of 60 would be 20,000. So we're talking 22, 23,000 people filed through Graceland in a single afternoon, in a few hours. Walked through the foyer where I'm sure a lot of you have been, if you've ever been to Graceland and taken the tour. Stepped in exactly the same spot you were in, but they saw Elvis in his casket. 22 or 23,000 people. That's just mind-boggling. And it's sad that more than 40,000 didn't make it through, but how many could they have done? And if they had stayed and let it keep going, could they have finished it all by morning, or would more and more people just have kept showing up? I also heard things like people would go and get back in line and push their way back in and, get through twice and stuff like that. I have no idea if that really happened, and we haven't seen any reports on that yet. So let's watch the
For the most part, the crowd cooperated with police and National Guardsmen who were activated to help control the crowd. About 1,000 fans are still standing vigil at the Presley Mansion, holding out some hope they will be permitted inside. But there's little chance of that. A sad ending for the king of rock and roll. His Memphis concert was scheduled August 27th, where he was reportedly planning to announce his Christmas Day marriage to Ginger Alden. The two had been engaged since January. A private funeral service will be held at the mansion tomorrow morning, with burial at Forest Hill Cemetery, where his mother is buried.
So according to this news source, Elvis was marrying Ginger, and he was getting ready to announce it, and they all expected him to announce it. This wasn't a surprise. It wasn't a secret from anybody. Everybody apparently knew, and they didn't have a problem stating it right here on the news. So the fact that there's so much controversy about it today, and whether he would or he wouldn't, or whether he really meant it, or whether he planned it, or, the Spa guy recently put out a video where he found what he believes is the church where it would have happened. And if you follow his reasoning, it sure sounds like it's the right place. And I would like to go see that place anyway, just because it's an interesting architectural place. And I believe it's the church that Elvis was referencing through a reference from Charlie Hodge. So I'm not sure Elvis had even seen the place, but there's a massive amount of evidence that this was all going to happen. And here it appears that the whole world believes, yeah, it's happening. Like, this isn't even a question. Like, if we went back to 1977 and somebody asked, well, is Elvis really going to marry her? Well, of course he's going to marry her. Everybody expected it to happen.
Memorial services will also be held tomorrow in Elvis' boyhood home in Tupelo, Mississippi.
All right, and now I've got one more for us. All right, this one, we're actually not going to watch this right now. It has no narration or voiceover or anything. It's just simply a video of what happened that day. So I think it is important that we see it at some point. But we are running out of time for today's broadcast. We're down to just about 9 minutes. So let me jump forward, because I have some other fun stuff that I want to show you. So, like usual, it looks like we don't quite make it as far as I'd hope so. So, the thumbnail for this one said that JD Sumner would speak, and then Sonny and Dave would speak. We're not going to make it to Sonny and Dave. That's going to have to be tomorrow. We will watch them. I've got their broadcast ready to go. And we started on a article of them a couple episodes ago, and we never got all the way to the end, and it reveals how much money they got paid and other details like that I definitely want to share with you. But I want us to spend our time on it. Goodbye, Honolulu. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. I hope to see you back here. So we didn't get to finish that out, and I want to spend the time that it really deserves. So I'm not going to try to smash it into these few minutes, but I am going to show you this here, which is a TCB necklace, and you can see that it's got diamonds on it. This is a 14-karat yellow gold TCB necklace set with 25 round diamonds totaling 1.37 carats. It weighs altogether 35.5 grams. And this TCB was given by Elvis to Dr. Nick. This was Dr. Nick's personal TCB. Now, when Elvis gave it to him, I don't believe it had the diamonds. I believe Dr. Nick had those put on. It's not clear to me whether Dr. Nick paid to have them put on or whether Elvis paid for that, but it did not have diamonds when he originally was given it by Elvis, according to what I've seen. So I do have more details on this necklace, and this is kind of a teaser that I actually have a whole bunch of these necklaces, like information about a lot of them. And I know that they're seen as a symbol of the inner circle, and that the inner circle has pushed that very heavily, that this is only for the Memphis Mafia, that if you had this, you were a member of the Memphis Mafia. Same kind of with the TLC. I could say that that's not really true. Or if it is that there are members of the Memphis Mafia and the inner circle of ladies that you guys don't know about. And I'm considering doing an entire little sub-series because I don't think I could fit it all into one episode about these TCBs and a lot of different information that goes with them. And I think that you guys would find that interesting. So if you guys do, definitely put that in the comments and let me know. And if you're listening to this later, let me know in the comments, and maybe I could get that going as well. I think there's a lot of stuff that our fictional fan Joyce could learn from who has a TCB and who doesn't, and who has a TLC and who doesn't, and how they fit into Elvis's life. But that is, let me not get out of here without giving you the free link for today. I do love to give out the free links. This one, before I post it, this is a link to an article about David Stanley from a couple of years ago, 2023. So this article allows you that are following this series to get a jump ahead. We haven't really talked about David Stanley yet. Haven't really talked about Ricky Stanley. We touched on them, but they haven't actually entered the public consciousness yet because they haven't been in any of the news stories or on television or anything like that yet. So they're still waiting to be discovered by Joyce. But if you want to jump ahead and bring the story almost all the way up to today, that's what this link is going to allow you to do. It goes to a couple of years ago when David Stanley apologizes once again for things that he said in 2022. So David's story has been through a lot of iterations, and the one that we will see from the 1977, 78, 79 periods, those aren't going to jive with his stories from, say, 2022. But in 2022, when he's in a movie, when he's in a documentary, and he says things, and then in 2023, he says, oh, those things that I said are not true, so I have to apologize for them. Just shows that what we're going to see probably is not accurate. And it just will give you an idea of how far his stories have come. But before you click on it, it's from let's see. It's from where did my link go? It is, here we go. It's from E! Online. Okay, so E! Online is, if you've ever watched like E! News, they're very commercial heavy. So if you go to this website, it is very ad heavy. So I just want you to know that before you click on it and go to it and see it. The information is very interesting, but ad heavy. So just be prepared that you're going to have those ads pop up and all that from E! Online, who that's how they make all their revenue. And that's how they keep articles like this out there for us to see. And it is kind of an important one because it just shows that David's story, if you haven't heard it from 2024 on, may not be accurate, because in 2023, he's saying, whoops, said some bad things again in 2022. And that is really it for me for today. I don't see anything else in the comments at this time. Marion saying thank you. I learned a lot. And that every car had its lights on to honor Elvis. Yeah, that's a real interesting fact, right? And the flags at half-mast. And Carolyn saying thanks. And so thank you guys all for coming. The broadcast can't live without you. The channel can't live without you. Hopefully you know other Elvis fans that will love this information, that you'll be able to get it out there too, and they can come and see these stories for themselves. And we can all start over with the source material and making decisions for ourselves and forming our own opinions about what happened to Elvis Presley. And until I see you guys again next time, you all keep on taking care of business.